Hi, I am Sophia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
The text came in at 11:47 on a Thursday night, which is how I knew my mother had been thinking about it all day and only worked up the nerve after my father went to bed. Don't come to Christmas this year, sweetheart. Marcus's new wife Jade says having you there changes the energy of the room. You know how newlyweds are. We just want everyone comfortable. You understand? I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down on my desk and looked at the window for a while. Outside, Chicago in December was doing what Chicago in December always does, making the cold look beautiful from indoors and brutal the moment you stepped into it. The skyline was strung with light. 14 floors below, a cab moved slowly through fresh snow. I picked up the phone. I opened the thread. My father had already replied to my mother's message. Not to me separately, but directly in the family group chat where my mother had apparently sent her message to everyone simultaneously. My brother Marcus, my aunt, my cousin Brianna, all of them agreed. My father had written, "Keep it drama-free." 3 people had liked it. I stared at the word drama for a moment. I thought about all the years I had spent being the least dramatic person in any room I entered. The years of arriving quietly, leaving quietly, holding my reactions steady while things were said around and about me that would have justified a great deal of drama. The particular discipline it takes to be invisible on purpose when invisibility is the only version of presence your family has room for. Then I typed one word. Understood. I set the phone down. I turned back to my laptop. I had a pitch deck to finish. My name is snow.I. I am 32 years old. I am the founder and CEO of Luminary Labs, a tech-enabled workforce development platform that connects underrepresented talent pipelines to Fortune 500 hiring programs. We operate in 11 cities. We have placed over 14,000 people into employment in the past 4 years. Our Series B closed at $112 million 18 months ago. Forbes had called in October about their annual CEO of the Year feature. The December issue, the one that hits newsstands the week before Christmas. The one that sits in dentist offices and airport terminals and suburban living rooms for the month of January. I had agreed to the interview and the profile, and when their photo editor asked about the cover I said yes. I said yes because Patricia, my COO, my first hire, the woman who had believed in Luminary before it had a name, told me that visibility at this scale would open pipeline doors in 3 cities we'd been trying to crack for 2 years, and Patricia is never wrong about this kind of thing. I said yes, and I meant it professionally, and I did not at any point in October calculate what the December issue would mean for my family's Christmas morning. I want to be clear about that. I am not a person who manufactures moments. What happened on Christmas Day was not something I engineered. It was something I simply did not prevent. There is a version of this story where those are the same thing. I have spent a considerable amount of time sitting with that version. But let me tell you who I was before I was a CEO. Because the before matters as much as the after, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling a cleaner story than the truth provides. I grew up in a house in Evanston, Illinois that was run on a specific unspoken economy of achievement. My father, Dr. Emmanuel Achabi, is a cardiologist. My mother, Linda, managed the household with the precision and social intelligence of someone who understood that her job was to make my father's success look effortless and to raise children who extended it. My brother Marcus, 2 years older, broader in the shoulder, easier in a room, absorbed this economy instinctively. He became a corporate real estate attorney. He made partner at 34. He drove the right car and joined the right club, and last spring married Jade Holloway, whose family is from Atlanta money and who has never in the 8 months I have known her, said anything unkind to my face. What Jade said behind my face was apparently a different matter. I was the other kind of child in that house. The one who read too much and talked too precisely and had opinions in rooms where opinions were not the assignment. My father loved me in the way that brilliant, disappointed men love children who remind them of themselves, which is to say, with genuine intensity and no ability to show it without it somehow becoming about their own expectations. My mother loved me the way she loved difficult things, carefully from a slight distance, with the permanent low-level anxiety of someone waiting for the thing to go wrong. When I left a perfectly good product management job at 26 to start Luminary in my apartment, my father said, "The failure rate for startups is 92%. I raised you to be in the 8%. This concerns me." He meant it as an expression of confidence in me. I understood that. But what I also understood was that he had said the word failure first. For 3 years I bootstrapped. I slept badly. I ate standing up over my kitchen sink more times than I can count. I hired Patricia, who believed, and James, our first engineering lead, who believed, and slowly, carefully, we built the thing that I had seen in my head the night I sat in my apartment with a whiteboard and wrote down the specific problem I wanted to solve and the specific reason no one had solved it the way I intended to. My family knew I had a startup. They knew it was doing okay. They had stopped asking detailed questions after the second year, when the detailed answers took longer than they were comfortable with and the revenue numbers were not yet the kind that translated into a language my father recognized. When my Series A closed at $34 million, I told them. My father said, "Investor money is not profit. Don't celebrate borrowed success." My mother said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Are you eating?" When the Series B closed at $112 million, I did not tell them. Not right away. I told Patricia and James and my best friend Kezia, and I went to dinner with those 3 people and I ordered the good wine and we sat together for 4 hours and talked about the 14,000 people who had jobs because of what we had built, and that felt like the right container for the news. I told my parents 2 months later, casually at Thanksgiving. My father nodded and said the valuation was impressive but that he'd believe it when he saw profitability. My mother asked if I was seeing anyone. Marcus's new wife Jade asked how the little app was doing. I said it was doing well. I said nothing else. After I put my phone down that Thursday night, I worked until 2 a.m. This is not unusual. I am a person who works until 2 a.m. with some frequency, not from compulsion but because the hours between midnight and 2 are the quietest the city gets, and my brain, which is rarely quiet, finds something like rest in having the world go still around it. My apartment is large and warm and contains, among other things, a wall of books organized by subject rather than author, a record player that belonged to my grandfather, a rescued greyhound named Octavia who sleeps in a specific patch of afternoon sunlight that moves across the floor like a slow sundial, and a framed photograph above my desk of the 14-person team that was present on the day we hit our 10,000th placement. I look at that photograph when the work is hard. It does not solve hard work, but it reorients it. I have a therapist named Dr. Wren who I see every other Tuesday who once told me that the reason I was so effective at holding other people's pain without absorbing it was that I had spent my childhood learning to hold my own without showing it. She meant this as an observation, not a compliment. I understood the difference. We have been working on it. The Friday after the text, I had lunch with Kezia, who has been my best friend since our freshman year at Northwestern and who is now a journalist with a particular gift for asking the question you were hoping she wouldn't. Your mother excluded you from Christmas in a group chat, Kezia said. Family chat, yes. With your brother and aunt and cousin in it. Correct. And your father liked it. Technically, he replied, agreed, which is Simone. I looked at my salad. I know. Are you okay? I thought about the honest answer. The honest answer was, I am okay in the large sense and not okay in the specific, precise sense of a woman who spent 32 years trying to earn a seat at a table that keeps being moved. The honest answer was that the text had not surprised me, and that the absence of surprise was its own kind of grief, because surprise would have meant I'd been expecting better, and I had apparently stopped expecting better without noticing when that happened. I'm doing the Forbes cover, I said instead. December issue. Kezia put down her fork. The CO issue? Yes. She looked at me for a long moment. And Christmas is in December. It is. When does the issue drop? Christmas morning. Digital at midnight, newsstands by 8. Kezia picked her fork back up. She was very carefully not smiling. I see. I didn't plan it, I said. I know you didn't. I genuinely did not think about the timing when I agreed to the cover. I believe you completely, she said in the tone of someone who believed me and also understood that the universe sometimes makes plans that people don't. I want to tell you what Luminary actually does because the numbers are only meaningful if you understand what they're counting. Workforce development as an industry has a specific and persistent failure. It serves the people already closest to opportunity. The programs that exist, the apprenticeships, the corporate pipelines, the training initiatives, are built around candidates who already know how to navigate corporate environments, who went to the right schools or have the right networks or know what to wear to an interview where the dress code is unspoken but absolute. They are built for people who are already, in some essential way, legible to the system. What Luminary does is build legibility. We identify talent in communities that corporate pipelines have historically missed. Communities where the talent is real and abundant and simply unconnected to the infrastructure that would recognize it. We provide not just skills training but the full context. How to interview, how to negotiate, how to read a room, how to be excellent in an environment that was not built with you in mind. And then we connect directly to our corporate partners, 340 of them as of last quarter, who have made genuine commitments to hiring from our pipelines. The 14,000 placement number is the one that gets quoted. The number I care about is the average wage increase our participants see within 2 years of placement, 64%. That number means houses, children in better schools, retirement accounts opened for the first time, the compounding of stability. I started Luminary because I understood the problem from the inside. I was the first-generation navigating kid in every professional room I entered, despite my father's credentials, because his credentials were his, and the room's legibility requirements were mine to figure out alone. I made it across and I never stopped thinking about everyone who didn't have the specific combination of luck and stubbornness and access that I had. Patricia runs our day-to-day operations with a precision that I could not replicate and am grateful every morning I don't have to. James has built an engineering team that is the best I have ever worked alongside. Our VP of Partnerships, a man named Darius who found us through one of our own placement programs 6 years ago and who is now one of the most effective relationship builders I have ever met, has opened doors in cities that I could not have opened alone. These are the people I worked for. They are also, in the way that chosen families work, the people who worked for me, who showed up in the hard years, who believed the thing before it was believable, who make the thing real every day. My family knew their names. My mother asked about Patricia at Thanksgiving sometimes. My father had once said, in a tone I think was meant to be a compliment, that it sounded like I'd built a real team. Marcus had never once asked what Luminary actually did. Jade had asked once if it was like one of those job app things. I said yes. It was easier. I spent Christmas Eve in the office until 6, which is a choice that sounds sadder than it felt. The office at Christmas Eve is one of my favorite versions of it. The skeleton crew, the easy energy, the particular quality of a building that is usually loud going quiet. Patricia had left at noon to catch a flight to her sister's in Atlanta. James was already in Memphis with his kids. I did a final walkthrough, turned off the lights in the conference room, fed Octavia, who had come to work with me as she does every Friday, and drove home through snow that was doing its beautiful from inside thing again. Kezia came over. We made pasta and drank a good Burlo and put Stevie Wonder on the record player and did not talk about my family at all, which was exactly the right thing. We talked about Kezia's reporting on a housing story she'd been working for 3 months. We talked about a book we had both just read. We talked about Octavia's recent decision to sleep inside a laundry basket as if it were a dog bed, which it is not, and the philosophical implications of a greyhound who has fully committed to a bit. At midnight, Kezia hugged me at the door and said, "Merry Christmas, Simone." "Merry Christmas," I said. I went to bed. I slept, which is not something I always do easily but which came that night without argument. I did not check my phone until morning. The Forbes digital edition drops at midnight Eastern, which is 11 p.m. Chicago time. I knew this. I was asleep by then and I had, with deliberate intention, turned my notifications off before I went to bed, not to avoid it, but because I had decided that whatever the morning brought, I wanted to meet it rested and clear rather than having processed it half asleep at midnight. I woke at 7:14. Octavia was already awake, standing at the side of the bed with the patient, dignified expression of a dog who has been waiting an appropriate amount of time and is beginning to reconsider her patience. I let her out. I made coffee. I stood at my kitchen window with the mug and watched the snow, which had continued overnight and had covered the city in the particular silence that only a Christmas morning snowfall produces. The feeling of a city that has agreed for one morning to be still. Then I turned my phone on. There were 47 text messages. 11 missed calls. My email notification showed 200 plus unread since midnight. The texts were from Patricia, all caps, multiple exclamation points, James, a string of emojis followed by actual sentences, Darius, brief and genuine, Kezia, who I suspected had been awake at midnight checking, for college friends, 2 board members and a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be a journalist from the Wall Street Journal requesting comment on the Forbes feature. I scrolled through them with the coffee in my hand and the snow outside and Octavia leaning against my leg, and I felt something that was not quite pride and not quite relief but some third thing that lives between them. a kind of settling, like a building that has been slightly off its foundation for years and has finally, fully landed level. Then I saw the family thread. It had been quiet since my one-word reply 2 weeks earlier. Now at 8:47 a.m., it had exploded. The first message was from my cousin Brianna. "Oh my God, Simone is on the Forbes cover?" Then my Aunt Carol. "I'm looking at it right now. Simone, this is incredible." Then Marcus at 9:02. "Simone, what is this?" Then nothing from my parents for 11 minutes. Then my mother. "Sweetheart, I'm trying to call you." Then my father. "Simone, please call us." I set the phone down. I refilled my coffee. I took Octavia for a 20-minute walk through the snow, which is what I do when I need to think without the thinking becoming noise. The street was quiet. A few houses had children already visible in windows, new toys in hand. Someone's outdoor lights blinked cheerfully on a porch. The snow muffled everything. Thought about calling. I thought about what I would say and what they would say and whether the conversation I was about to have was the one I wanted to have or the one I was about to have by default. I went home. I sat with Octavia. And then, because I am who I am and the calls were going to happen regardless, I called my mother first. She answered before the second ring. "Simone." Her voice was something I hadn't heard from her before, or hadn't heard directed at me before. Something close to all, which is an uncomfortable thing to hear from your mother at 32 because it means you have been living for a long time, in the shadow of a much lower expectation. "Merry Christmas, Mom." Simone Forbes. The cover. "Your father and I, we had no idea." "I know. How long has, the article says Series B $112 million, 14,000, she stopped. I could hear her voice doing something complicated. "Why didn't you tell us?" I had rehearsed versions of this answer for years, the way you rehearse answers to questions you know are coming eventually. The kind, diplomatic version. The brief version. The version that moved quickly past the feeling to the practical information. What came out instead was something I hadn't fully rehearsed. Because every time I told you something was growing, Dad told me why it wasn't finished yet. And every time I needed you to just believe it was real, the conversation turned into a list of what could still go wrong. I paused. I needed to build it somewhere that those voices couldn't reach. And that meant not telling you until it was too big to be argued with. The silence on the line was long. My mother stopped again. "That's a terrible thing to hear, Simone." "I know. It's also true." Another silence. Then quietly, "Your father wants to talk to you." "I know he does. Tell him I'll call him separately." "I needed to talk to you first." A beat. "Why me first?" I thought about that honestly. Because you're the one who sent the text. And I needed you to know that I understood what it cost me. Not to punish you. Just so that we're not pretending it didn't happen. My mother was quiet for a very long time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, stripped of the careful management she usually kept in it. "I've been doing what your father needed. For 30 years. I've been smoothing things, Simone. Making the room comfortable. And sometimes making the room comfortable meant making me smaller." She didn't answer. Which was its own answer. "I know, Mom," I said. "I know that wasn't the intention. It wasn't. I know." We stayed on the line for a moment, both of us in the particular quiet of something that has been said that can't be unsaid, not because it was cruel but because it was accurate, and accuracy has a permanence that cruelty doesn't. "Merry Christmas," my mother said finally. "Merry Christmas," I said. I learned this part from Brianna, who had been at my parents' house and witnessed it, and who told me the story in a 20-minute voice memo sent at 2 p.m. on Christmas Day with the breathless quality of a person who has been waiting all day to deliver it. Jade had gone to get the mail at 8:30 a.m. The Forbes December issue, physical copy because my parents still subscribed to the print edition, was in the mailbox, rubber-banded, still in its plastic sleeve. Jade had not expected this. She had brought in the mail without looking at it, set it on the counter, and gone back to the living room where the family was finishing the last of the gift opening. My mother was in the kitchen. My father was in his chair. Marcus was on the couch. Brianna's account. She picked it up off the counter like 2 minutes later. I guess she was curious or whatever, and she took it out of the sleeve. And she just screamed. Like not a gasp, she actually screamed. And everyone came into the kitchen and she was just standing there holding the magazine with this expression like she was going to pass out. The cover line read, Simone Achebe, CEO of Luminary Labs, the woman rebuilding America's workforce from the ground up. The year's most important company, and the leader who built it invisible on purpose. My father had taken the magazine from Jade. He had looked at the cover for a long time. According to Brianna, he had not said anything for several minutes, which is not, for my father, a normal response to any stimulus. My father has opinions about everything in under 30 seconds. The silence was its own event. Marcus had asked to see it. He read the opening paragraphs. He set the magazine on the counter. Then he looked at where I was not. The chair that would have been mine, the place at the table that was empty because his wife had said my energy killed the vibe. And according to Brianna, he had the expression of a man doing arithmetic that was not coming out the way he expected. Jade had left the kitchen. She had gone upstairs. She did not come back down for 40 minutes. My father had called me at 9:15. I had been on my walk with Octavia. I called him back at noon. My father is a man who has never been wrong in front of me. Not officially. Not in the declared, acknowledged way. He has updated positions without labeling the update. He has moved from one stance to another across the space of a conversation without acknowledging the distance traveled. He is a brilliant man who has spent his entire career being the person who knew the most in the room, and the architecture of that identity does not leave easy room for the posture of being wrong. What he said to me on Christmas afternoon, therefore, was the closest thing to an apology my father has ever produced. I read the article, he said. I know. The work you're doing, the 14,000 people. The pipeline model. Pause. It's significant, Simone. Thank you. I want you to understand. He stopped. I waited. I had learned with my father that the waiting was where the real thing happened. The first sentence was often the door. The thing behind it needed room. I have pushed you your entire life because I was pushed. Because the alternative, in my experience, was being overlooked. And I could not, another stop. I could not tolerate the idea of you being overlooked. I thought about that. About the man who came from Lagos at 24 to an American medical system that did not automatically make room for him, who built a career and a reputation and a family in a country that had required him to prove himself at every threshold, and who raised his children with the same demand because in his experience the demand was what kept you safe. I know, Dad, I said. But I made you feel that what you were building wasn't real. Until it was too large to deny. He said this flatly without softening it, which is the closest my father gets to self-accusation. That is not what I wanted. What did you want? A long pause. I wanted you to be unassailable. I think I forgot that you already were. I sat with that for a while. Octavia put her long, elegant head in my lap. Outside, the snow had stopped and the light had gone the particular pale gold of a winter afternoon. I'm not angry, Dad, I said. And this was true in the complicated way that things can be true and not simple at the same time. I was not angry in the hot, immediate sense. I was something more chronic than angry, something that had lived in me for so long that it had become structural, and that would take longer than one phone call to dismantle. But I need you to understand that the reason I didn't tell you wasn't strategy. It was protection. Protection from me. Yes. The silence this time was different from my mother's silence. It was the silence of a man processing something that cost him something real. I understand, he said finally. I know you do. He stopped again. I'd like to know the work. If you're willing. I'd like to understand what you built. I'm willing, I said. It was not forgiveness exactly. It was an opening. A door cracked in a wall that had been solid for a very long time. What would come through it and whether it would be worth the opening was a question that Christmas afternoon did not answer. But I had said yes. And I meant it when I said it. The Forbes cover generated, by Patricia's count, 43 inbound partnership inquiries in the first 72 hours. 3 of them were from cities we had been trying to crack for 18 months. Darius spent the week between Christmas and New Year's triaging them with the particular joy of a man who loves nothing more than a door swinging open. Kezia sent me a screenshot of a tweet from a workforce development researcher whose work I had cited in Luminary's early pitch decks. Someone I had read before I had a team or a product or a reason to believe that what I was imagining was possible. The tweet said, "This Forbes profile of @Simone Achebe Luminary is one of the best pieces of business journalism I've read this year. The work is extraordinary. The builder behind it is more so." I saved the screenshot. I am not sentimental about most things, but I am sentimental about the right specific things. Marcus texted me on December 27th. Not in the family thread. Privately. Can we get lunch when you're in Evanston next? I want to actually understand what you built. Jade says she's sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I wanted to tell you. I looked at that message for a while. I thought about my brother. About the version of Marcus who had taught me to ride a bike and who still called me on the anniversary of the year we lost our grandfather and who had, somewhere in the process of absorbing our father's economy of achievement, learned to measure people the same way he'd been measured. I thought about how that happens. How the tools become the air you breathe without you choosing it. As I replied. New Year's weekend. Jade did not text me. I did not expect her to, and I did not need her to. Some apologies take longer than a week. Some take longer than that. I had built an entire company on the belief that people could change if the conditions for change were present and real. I extended the same assumption to my sister-in-law, with the understanding that extending it did not require waiting on it or centering my life around whether it arrived. I had work to do. On the last day of the year, I ran my usual route along the lakefront. The one I'd been running since I moved to Chicago 8 years ago. The one that goes north along the water where the lake in winter is gray and vast and entirely indifferent to you, which I find useful. I thought about the word invisible, the one the Forbes subheading had used. Built it invisible on purpose. The journalist had meant it about the company, about Luminary's deliberate low-profile strategy in its early years, the decision to grow through performance and referral rather than press and announcement. But I had read it and felt it land somewhere more personal than the company. I had been invisible on purpose too. I had made myself small enough to fit inside my family's understanding of me, and I had built the real thing in the space below the surface, where their assessments couldn't reach. I had done this as a survival mechanism, and I had done it, I was now honest enough to admit, as a form of protection for them as well. Because part of me knew that showing them the full scale of what I was building would require them to reckon with every time they had implied it wasn't possible. And I was not sure any of us were ready for that reckoning until it was unavoidable. The cover had made it unavoidable. Not by my design and not by accident, by the simple passage of time and the eventual size of the thing. There is a cost to being invisible. I know this with a precision that I could not have articulated 5 years ago. The cost is not only external, not only the missed dinners and the condescending questions and the group chat exclusions. The cost is the part of you that starts to believe the reduced version. The part that, after years of being seen as small, occasionally wonders if the small version is the real one and everything else is the performance. I had spent years arguing that part of myself back into its corner. The argument had been winning. But it had never been finished, and I did not think, standing at the edge of the lake on the last day of the year, that it would be finished in my lifetime. That was not a defeat. That was the honest shape of the work. Patricia called at 11:45 p.m. "Happy almost New Year," she said. "Happy almost New Year. How are you?" I thought about the question the way she meant it. Not how is the company, but how is Simone? Patricia asks that question and means it every time. "I'm good," I said. And this was true in the fullest sense I knew how to mean it. Not fine, not managing, but genuinely good in the way of a person who is standing in her own life and finds it, on balance, worth standing in. "I'm really good." "Good," she said. And I could hear her smiling. "Get some sleep. We have a hell of a year ahead of us." "We do," I said. I went home. I fed Octavia. I put on the record player. John Coltrane, the name I'd given the dog before I had the dog. The music I associated with the specific feeling of things being hard and beautiful at the same time. I sat in my reading chair with a glass of wine and the city outside my window making its slow, bright turn toward midnight. My phone buzzed. The family thread. My mother. "Happy New Year all. We love you." My father. "New Year. New understanding. I love my family." Brianna. "Happy New Year." Marcus, "Love you all." Simone. "Lunch still on?" I looked at those messages. I thought about the family that had built me and the family I had chosen and the life that was, in every material and immaterial way, mine, built by me, sustained by me, full of people who had shown up when the showing up was hard. I typed, "Happy New Year." And yes, Marcus. Lunch is on. I set the phone down. Octavia sighed from her basket. The record turned. Midnight came. I was exactly where I was supposed to be.